Good evening, friends. My name is Sean. I'm an alcoholic, and it's really good to be here with you all tonight. I want to thank my friend Elizabeth for reaching out to me and asking me to come and share my experience with all you fine folk. And I'm going to start just a traditional way. My sobriety date is August 3rd, 1981. My home group is 435 Compton Intergroup in the lovely city of Compton, California. My sponsor's name is John Flynn. He's the man that still has what I want. And I'm very grateful. I believe deeply in sponsorship. I like to say that I got free from the bondage of alcohol, this beautiful gift, very young, 16 years old. But I did not get freedom from the bondage of self until I was 51. And that's a whole lot of one day at a time of not drinking and suffering. I'm going to start from where I'm at today. I just want to share with you folks this beautiful life that I have in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's truly a blessing. I'm so grateful. I believe a guy I like to read, he talks about radical gratitude, practicing radical gratitude. And I believe in that. If I'm in an attitude of gratitude, it's going to be hard for me to be in self-pity, to be in self-centered fear, to be in self-delusion, to be in self-seeking. If I live in a state of radical gratitude, I'm going to be okay with what is. And most days, I'm okay with what is. No longer suffering from the delusion of, I know how things should be, and I know how you should all act, and I know how you should all treat me, and how everything should be. The delusion of control. I love what the big book says. Suffer from the delusion that I can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of the world if I just manage well. And my God, I've spent most of my lifetime trying to manage people, places, and things. Driven by self-centered fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. I constantly stepped on the toes of my fellows, and they always retaliated and hurt my feelings. But today I live in conscious connection with the power greater than myself that Alcoholics Anonymous gave me a structure and a path to. They gave me space and time, meaning they didn't throw my dumb ass out. Well, what other place can you go and be completely selfish, self-absorbed, defiant, angry, full of yourself, disrespectful, and they tell you, keep coming back. It's good to see you. Yeah. Every once in a while, hey, we got to have a meeting. So you're going to have to calm down or you're going to have to leave. But I was always welcome back. No other place in AA, not my own family. Not even in my own family. Alcoholics Anonymous gave me exactly what I needed. And today I have full, complete expectation. I live in the knowledge that AA got me. AA's got me and God's got me. I believe that without reservation. I live in these spiritual principles, anchored to them. I like to use the word anchor because that's really gives a good description of how I feel. And trusting and relying on God, my best friend, the only relationship that truly matters. Because in my relationship with God, being in right relation with God, then I'm going to be in right relation with myself, and I'm going to be in right relation with you. And when I get off the beam, I'm going to be able to make that right because I'm anchored to those spiritual principles. See, I've lived most of my life by my thinking and my emotions. Today, I live a life of beyond my wildest drunken dreams. An old timer here in the Los Angeles area named Johnny Caven Used to talk about living on Someday Street. When he'd be sitting there having them cocktails, talking about someday I'm gonna be doing this, and someday we're gonna go here, someday I'm gonna have that, someday I'm gonna give you this. I loved his wife too, Sally Cave. Black belt Alamo. Spent many evenings sitting at the coffee table. Sally cooking me some food. Johnny chain smoking them Chesterfields, drinking cup after cup of coffee off one of those little stovetop percolators where you'd see the coffee coming to the top and in the top of the coffee pot. Him reading to me from the big book Alcoholics Anonymous. That long ash on his cigarette. He's an East Coast guy, so he had that Massachusetts accent. Telling me the truth about my condition. He was my great grand sponsor. A man named Johnny Edwards was my sponsor. So I'm a backtrack. I'm gonna go back to the beginning of getting sober. If you came here to hear Drunkalogs and a comedy show, you're probably gonna be disappointed because I don't really talk Drunkalog. I figure you all assume I'm gonna give you the credit for being intelligent, thinking if I'm sitting here in an AA meeting, I'm an alcoholic, even though I know sometimes we're in AA meetings with people who aren't. But I'm a real alcoholic, as described in the big book Alcoholics Anonymous. So like I said, I got sober at 16. And an old guy named Jesse, I had called him. I'd gone to see a friend of mine one night. I was living with my parents under heavy duress. They didn't want me there. My mother didn't want me there because all I ever brought was pain and misery and embarrassment, humiliation to my family. A lot of police activity, a lot of violence, a lot of insanity. And I was told that if I drank again or any of those outside issues or any police presence, then I was going to have to go. And I like living indoors. I didn't want to go live on the streets. But I set out to go see a homie of mine, and I ran into this other cat. And I ended up at a house party. I'd already been introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. I hadn't had a drink in a couple months. This was on August 2nd, 1981. And I ended up at this house party, and somebody handed me a 40. And I didn't think nothing of it, and I tipped it up and I drank it. Somebody handed me a half pint, started drinking that. I had to go. I had to leave that house party. And I ended up at a Little League field, and I laid there till about 3 in the morning because I couldn't go home smelling of that liquor, walking funny, and face my parents. Not because I was concerned with what it would do to them. I was concerned with not having a place to live. And the next morning, I made a called this old guy, Jesse. And he called me back. He said he'd be over to pick me up and take me to the AA meeting. A couple nights later, we ended up at the meeting that ended up being my home group for the first 8 years of my recovery, a place called Indian Charlie's. I got sober with a bunch of old Skid Row winos. Met my sponsor, Johnny Edwards, a man that could just look at me and tell me the truth about my condition. He always had the exact right thing to say to me. I had an answer for everything. I was a smart ass. Thought I knew everything. Thought I was real clever. And I could never win with that man. He could right size me and shut me down with just a look. And see, I came to you find folk hating God. I want nothing to do with God. Thought I knew everything I needed to know about God, and those people who claim to represent or believe in God. And I'd summed it all up as a lie and I didn't want nothing to do with it. I was raised in religion, went to private school, Catholic school. I had some traumatic things happen to me there. I bring them up because they had a big impact on a significant time in my life, a significant amount of time. I'm not blaming anybody else for my actions and my alcoholism and my behavior or anything. I'm accountable for everything. But it is part of my story. You know, and things were done to me that shouldn't be done to any human being or any child, most definitely. You know, I was abused physically, mentally, emotionally, sexually by somebody claiming to represent God. And it affected me for a long period of my life. So I struggled with the big book. See, I knew they were trying to trick me into believing in a certain kind of God. And I wasn't going to have any of that. And I couldn't read it. I would just I'd get angry. I'd throw the book across the room. You know, I know today that them old timers, they were spoon feeding me the spiritual principles of Alcoholics Anonymous. See, the beauty of this is that they could meet me right where I was at. They could carry the message in a way that was palatable to a kid like me. They knew how to handle someone like me. They were uniquely qualified to carry the message to a kid like me. And in the early 80s, there weren't a lot of young people in Alcoholics Anonymous. And definitely not young people who looked like me. I had green hair, wore a leather jacket, had these boots up that came up to my knees. I always had black eyes, busted up hands. I was always in fights. And I was having a good time. I'm so grateful that they didn't tell me that I couldn't do any of that stuff. They just told me, don't drink. You keep coming back. So as I said, I was getting spoon-fed this program. And my sponsor could always right-size me. He always seemed to know exactly what to say. See, them old-timers, they told me, and I thought it was a trick, your own conception of God. It doesn't have to be that God that you were introduced to when you went to Catholic school. It doesn't have to be the God of your childhood. See, but I thought I was more clever than everybody. I knew that was the hook. And once they had me, then they was going to hit me with the truth. You know, it was just going to be another religious conversion. And I wasn't going to have none of that. I was way too smart for that. But I want to tell you now, if you are anything like me, if you're struggling with this whole conception of God, you know, if it makes that your gourd rise when anybody talks about God, and you get angry and you want to scream, I understand. But I'm telling you the truth, just as them old timers were telling me the truth. That has been exactly what has happened to me in Alcoholics Anonymous. My own conception of God. And it started very crudely and simply for me. A group of drunks. We can do together what we can't do alone. You can't stay sober. We're all staying sober. We ain't drinking. If you want to be sober, come with us and do what we do. This group of drunks has more power than just you. Can you wrap your head around that, Sean? I said, yes, that makes sense to me. I could do that. You know? And it was a good start. Many, many people have started their spiritual journey in the same way or something very similar. When the literature says all-inclusive, never exclusive, broad and roomy, that is what we're talking about here. See, what I've come to believe through my experience, because I believe God is a verb, not a noun. I believe God is experiential, not theoretical. That the God that I've found in Alcoholics Anonymous wants to have a relationship with me and every one of his kids. And he will meet me or she, whatever your label is, wherever you can meet God. If it's in your faith of your childhood, God's cool with that. If it's in music, nature, meditation, silence, wherever you can meet God, God wants to have a relationship with you so much that God will meet you there. That's what I've found. So that whole group of drunks really worked for me. And I was right in the middle. I call it the loving arms of Alcoholics Anonymous. So that's truly what it was. And it's truly what it is today. I love my sponsor. I know today that I made it my higher power. I know that. He had told me, I'm not your higher power. But I put him on a pedestal. I hung on every word he said. I followed his direction. Even though at times I'd do what I wanted to do, because I always thought it was better to beg for forgiveness than ask for permission. And that always got me in trouble. And I'd have to come and talk to him about it. And that in itself was part of my process. See, I would do these things, but I was willing to talk about it. I was willing to be honest. I was willing to tell on myself. And I was learning, and I was growing, and I was being fed the spiritual principles, even though I didn't know it then. But as my story, because it is my story, my experience, my sponsor died when I was 8 years sober. And I didn't handle it well. Matter of fact, I was very angry with him. I was angry when he got sick, and I was angry when he transitioned. That's how self-absorbed and selfish I was. Everything's about me. And my home group, it was a real rowdy bunch, real profane. We had trouble. It was a big meeting, a couple hundred people. First night I went there was over 200 people there. And everybody's drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes and, loud and obnoxious and vulgar at times. I loved it. But we had a hard time keeping a building. People didn't like renting to us. We were hard on the carpeting. We were hard on their property. And we moved around a bunch and meeting. Sometimes we had to switch nights, and the meeting started to splinter and fracture, and I had other things going on in my life. Being distracted from my primary purpose, I was mostly chasing money and women, and got away from my home group. I actually got a resentment when a bunch of the old timers had started another meeting, and they didn't come back to our home group, and so I just left all of it. I'll go to some other meetings. And I went to some other meetings, and they talked about God in a different way than was palatable to me. And I couldn't go. That first time I stopped going to Alcoholics Anonymous for a couple of years. I didn't drink. And got diverted from my primary purpose by money, property, and prestige. Married a really pretty girl in AA. CA has always taken care of me. When I was 18, I got to join the union from a guy in AA. Hey kid, you want a job? Yeah. You willing to work hard? Yeah. Do you show up? Yes. You want to join the union? Okay. I've always been taken care of by AA. So I had joined the Carpenters Union. Work had gotten really slow in the LA area back around 1989, 90. And I was married, and my first wife's my father-in-law, he was a superintendent at an oil refinery. So, you want to come work at the refinery, kid? And I said, sure. Is it steady? He said, yeah. I said, it pay good? He said, yes. I said, I'm there. And I had a over a 30-year career in the oil industry. So, I'm going to meetings, and I stopped going. Now I'm working, buying our first home, married, a couple new cars, taking vacations. I start building a stock portfolio, T-bills, CDs, looking at buying a vacation home. Got these two purebred dogs with papers that we take for walks at night on the nice streets in the suburbs. All the neighbors are waving at us. We're waving at the neighbors. I'm living the American dream. Life is good. Yeah. I remember I was at a friend of mine's hair salon, and Johnny H from Bellflower Big Book Group, who I've known most of my life. He was there, and how you been, kid? I haven't seen you. And I started to tell Johnny my tale, and you know, I haven't been going to meetings, Johnny. You know, and all that people do is sit around and talk about their problems. Bunch of sick people staying sick. I don't have time for that. I got to get out and get this life going and make this money, and you know, these are the things that are going on, and I remember Johnny's face. I remember the look in his eyes. I remember that little shake of his head, and him telling me, "Good luck, kid." You know, as he left the shop. You know, so that whole, see, what I've come to realize, and maybe some of you can relate to this, that see, nobody can love me enough. There's no pile of possessions that are high enough or wide enough. You know, there's no zip code, neighborhood, cars, status, wife, no wife, girlfriend that is going to take care of that thing that I got. I've come to describe it as a sense of lack. My whole life, I've had this sense of lack, something missing inside. And I'm physically sober. This time I'm talking about, I'm not drinking. See, I know today what I suffered from for most of my life is untreated alcoholism, self-reliance, the spiritual malady. All of those things are the same thing. Dying of alcoholism without a drink of alcohol in my system. And I keep, my story is going to be a story of insanity without any alcohol. I'm going to tell a tale of doing the same thing over and over and over again and getting the same result and not being able to figure out the math, not seeing that the common denominator is me. So, you know, the first marriage goes, lose the home, lose the bank account, lose the vacation home, lose everything but the job. I didn't lose the job this time. I was able to keep that. And then I really come off the rails. I go on first I go back to AA, and I'm at a meeting in Long Beach, a meeting called the Round Table. I wouldn't be sober today if it wasn't for the Round Table. It's really a first step club, and I fit right in. I call it a pack of wolves and a den of thieves, you know, and people there are just not drinking. They don't really much care for God. They don't much really care about the big book or steps or sponsorship or much of any of that. Are you not drinking today? And are you talking to other drunks? And are you going to meetings? And I fit right in. Went to a lot of meetings. I was going to 22 meetings a week. But because I lack character, because I'm not anchored in any spiritual principles, because I don't have a relationship with a power greater than myself. Matter of fact, I'm playing God. You know, Bill tells us in the big book, the first thing we got to do is quit playing God. Well, there isn't a power greater than me from my perspective. And see what happens to me if I don't have a spiritual solution and I'm not drinking. When I become restless, irritable, discontent, I just switch my obsession to something else. And for me, I've found through inventory that my two biggest defects of character are lust and greed. So I turn to money and I turn to sex and or love. So love hunger, sex addiction, consumed by money. And I'm going to this meeting, and it's really the only meeting that I can tolerate. And because I lack character, I end up sleeping with every woman there that'll sleep with me. Because everybody there is half crazy and full of self and just not drinking. I had plenty of hostages or hostage takers, depending on what the scenario was with that particular person. And it finally got to a point where I just couldn't live with myself. I'd be in a meeting and there'd be 7, 8, 10 women in the meeting that I'd slept with and hadn't treated very well, had dismissed, walked away from, lied to. And they don't take that very kindly. They don't treat you very well when you're in a room with them. And the heat got too hot. And because I lack character, I couldn't stand there in the mess that I had created. So I did what I always do. I have two moves when me playing God gets me into trouble. I either blow it all up and or run away. So I usually blow it all up and then I run away and then start over again. And that's what I did there. And once again, I tried to go to some other meetings. Couldn't go. Left AA for 5 years. Didn't drink. Still working at the oil refinery, making well into the 6 figures. You see, I'm getting sicker and sicker because I'm not being fed spiritually. And the only thing that will solve my problem is a spiritual solution, spiritual principles, a relationship with God. I have none of that. I'm just not drinking. And I'm getting sicker and sicker and sicker. All these other obsessions of the mind. Women, gambling, food, work, exercise, material possessions. And I take everything to the bare metal. You ever see them like in the movies and the cars, the rubber's off and they're just riding on the rims and sparks are flying everywhere and they just keep going. That's me. You know, that's how I live without a drink, just with my thinking and my emotions. Playing God, running the show. 17 years sober, working at a refinery, making well over $100,000 a year. I'm doing commercial burglary, credit card fraud, insurance fraud, breaking into homes, carrying guns, gang violence. I'm completely insane without a drink. I used to actually get offended when people I knew, because I'm still kind of around the edges of AA, and these people that I knew personally, I think, well, why don't they come talk to me? I've been sober like 3 times as long as them. Yeah, just insane, complete insanity. And I hit a bottom. See, I had to have another experience in step 1, and I wish I could tell you now that the story I'm going to tell you was the bottom, but I didn't put the shovel down. I thought I hit the bottom, but I kept my shovel in my hand. You don't hit the bottom until you drop the shovel. But I got to a place. I'm getting off work at this time. I'm working I was working shift work, and I'm working a split shift. I'm the second 2 night shifts. I get off at 5 in the morning, and I'm driving down Ocean Boulevard along the beach. Beautiful, beautiful homes, beautiful view. I don't see any of it. I don't own a home anymore. I'm living in a little apartment down by the beach. I should be grateful, but I'm not. And I'm stopping at an AM PM, and I'm buying chocolate Haagen-Dazs ice cream at 5 in the morning, and I'm going home, and I'm putting in Apocalypse Now, and I'm getting to my humidor and getting me a Cuban cigar, and I'm smoking a Cuban cigar and eating chocolate Haagen-Dazs ice cream, watching Apocalypse Now almost every day when I get off in the morning. Just thinking about, why am I even sober? Look at my life. See, that scared me because I'd always been, nobody can take my sobriety away except me, and I'm only going to lose my sobriety by pouring a drink down my throat. And now I don't see the value in my physical sobriety because look at my life. See, I'm in a state of restlessness, irritability, and discontentment, and I've been under duress for a long time. And I know now that was the beginning. I went back to the round table. I walked through that door. And I could feel that, and I'm sure many of you have had the same feeling. When everything's all wrong and you get to that meeting, man, you cross that threshold, and you're like, oh man, God, it's good to be home. But I was scared. I was scared. See, I knew there was no more rationalization or justification. I knew if I left AA again, I was going to get drunk. I knew it. I wasn't going to be able to leave. But here's the problem. I always leave. At some point, you all piss me off. I get resentful. I can't be around you. My mind tells me, you got to go. You'll handle it yourself. Even though it starts, I'll go to some other meetings. That never happens. And I know if I leave again, I'm drunk. And I don't want to be drunk. So I'm like, man, I got to stay. Something's got to be different. I know today that this was the beginning, another beginning of me being given some humility. See, I'm in constant need of God's grace and mercy, and I was experiencing it then, and I didn't even know it. Today, I'm very aware. I'm in constant need of God's grace and mercy. So I hung on, and I tried to do things a little different. I tried to get in the middle, do what other people do. I want to also tell you, my first sponsor died when I was 8 years sober. I didn't get another sponsor for 18 years. I was sponsored by myself. I was sponsored by a fool. I was 26 years sober, and John Flynn walked into the round table. I know God brought it to me. That man had no business being at that meeting. He's kind. He's gentle. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't cuss. He's humble. And he walked into this pack of thieves, a den of wolves, to carry the message. He had ran into somebody at another meeting. He was feeling like his AA meetings were a little dry, and he wanted to just change things up a little bit. And he walked into my life. And I immediately was drawn to him. I knew something was different about him. But me, I'm 26 years sober, so, I got to check him out. I got to see if he's worthy of sponsoring me, helping me, So I have a couple little conversations with him, and finally I asked him to sponsor me. And my God, I never stayed in front of him because he doesn't like it. But that man saved my life. Truly saved my life. He was kind, gentle, but he told me the truth about my condition. I'd like to tell you fine folk that from this point on, I've been walking in the grace and mercy and love of God, and I've been walking these principles and living this wonderful life. But I had a lot to let go of. Those violent twists of my personality that they talk about in the 12 and 12. That queer thinking that had been established in me long ago. I was in the death throes of my second marriage. I was married to a woman who couldn't stay sober. See, no healthy woman would have anything to do with me. Water seeks its own level, sick attracts sick. And there was no healthy woman that was ever going to be involved with me. And I had met my second wife when I was 19, and ran into her again years later when she was coming back to the program. And the whole time that we were together, she was in different stages of recovery, in and out, lots of insanity. Ended up leaving her, and I wish I could say that I turned to God and went inward and did all this inner work and really got involved in the 12 steps and prayer and meditation, and started going to retreats and being of service. But what I did is I fell in love with a newcomer. And I'm 28 years sober, and I'm with a girl who is not even 30 days sober. And we were together for 18 months. She left the woman to be with me. And when she left me to be with a woman, I was completely caught off guard. I was surprised. I was devastated. I was hurt deeply, and I almost drank. I went to the girl that she ended up getting with. At one time was a really good friend of mine. We are friends again. She was having problems in her marriage, and so it kind of just worked out fine for her, the two of them. I went to sit down and have a talk with them, and I was so insane and so delusional that when she said she wanted to talk to me, I thought I was going to go down to this restaurant and that they were going to make amends to me and that everything was going to go back to the way it was, and I was going to live happily ever after. And I walked into that restaurant, and like the Untouchables, when Sean Connery tells the guy, it's like just like you to bring a knife to a gunfight. I didn't even have a knife. And I walked in there, and those two ladies tore me to ribbons. And I walked out of there hyperventilating, crushed, defeated, destroyed, no moves left, thirsty, like a wounded animal. I was able to make it home. I called a woman who's known me since I got sober, named Betty Austin. She lives in Escondido, beautiful member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And she told me some heavy, harsh truth. Of course, I didn't follow direction, but I sat in front of the house that I'm sitting in now. And I was in my car, and I was coming apart. I needed a drink because I couldn't feel the way I was feeling anymore. I was just done. See, I still hadn't turned to God. I turned back to AA. I turned to sponsorship. I didn't have a real personal relationship with God. Thank you. I still had lots of ego, lots of arrogance, lots of self-confidence. And I was sitting there in that car, coming apart, snot coming out of my nose, crying, beating on the steering wheel. Maybe some of you have seen that movie, Bad Lieutenant, with Harvey Keitel, when he's in that church and he's coming apart. That was me in that moment. I just cried out for help. See, in that moment, there was only King Alcohol or God. That's all there was. That second step proposition. God either is or isn't. What's your choice going to be, Sean? God either is or he isn't. God or King Alcohol. And I cried out for help to this God that I thought I'd dismissed. And I'm so grateful. As our literature talks about, when my heart truly opened to God, God revealed himself to me. And he didn't say anything like, I've been waiting on you. It's about time. Well, this is what you're going to have to do before I hook you up. No, it was none of that. It was immediate. Immediate. God revealed himself to me. I was able to get out of that car that I'd been sitting in for quite a while, walk into my house. And I remember distinctly walking up the walkway, and this thought came into my head. Man, this God that all these people have been telling me about my whole life, it better exist, because if it don't, I am done. And I remember this feeling coming over me. It's all right. It's all right. I was able to sleep that night. And things started changing. I got a call from my job because she wasn't going to leave. She was going to stay living here with me, sleeping with somebody else. And I was completely paralyzed. And I didn't know what to do. I couldn't do anything. And my job said, we need you to go up to Northern California. There's a project up there. We need you to go oversee it. Can you leave and go? And I said, yes, when? It was the day after Thanksgiving. I got on a plane. I was gone for 4 months. God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. I just kept saying yes. I went through all the inventory, praying on my knees, talking to my sponsor, talking to Betty every day, crying and whining. And those beautiful people, man, they tolerated me. Something happened for me, and I know once again it was God working through people. I told you my sponsor don't raise his voice. He don't cuss. And I drove that man to the point of stepping out of character where he cussed me out and raised his voice and hung up the phone on me. And it was exactly what I needed in that moment. Him stepping out of character like that was like a big slap in the face. And he basically told me, God's removed her from your life. You won't let go, you dummy. But with a little bit more flowery language. And I could see it in that moment. I could see it. I could see how I wasn't letting go. I'm 800 miles away and I'm trying to control everything in Long Beach from Benicia, California. Once again, I'm really sick, and a lot has to be unraveled, and a lot has to be let go of. These old ideas, these old belief systems. See, I don't fully trust and rely on God yet. I'm the educational variety. I'm headed in that direction, but I'm not there yet. See, my sponsor would tell me these things, and this is how sick I was. He would talk about what he would do, and my mind would tell me that ain't gonna work. That's stupid. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But I would do it anyways. I asked this man for help, but my mind would also think, okay, you're gonna give this everything you got. I'm gonna give it my best, because when it don't work, then I can say I was right. That's how sick I was. I would take the action and I would get the results. That might be like common knowledge to all of you, because you all look a lot smarter than me. But I didn't think, if I didn't believe in it and I didn't think it, then it wasn't true. I really believed that. Another thing that I learned, this was shocking to me, and it was life-changing. The rules apply to me. I thought rules were for dumb people, church folk, and suckers. I had some other lessons to learn, and those didn't come as easy. The ultimate lesson was I learned I had to give every area of my life to God. That includes money and women. I told you that lust and greed were my two biggest defects of character. I wasn't ready to turn those over to God yet. I got that, God. See, I knew I couldn't be in a relationship because I would fall in love and I'd make her my higher power. And then I would build up this life and I'd set up this perimeter wire for my hostage to stay within. And I'd be under the delusion that I was loving and kind and had a beautiful, open, free, giving relationship until she actually tried to have some free will and stepped outside the perimeter wire, and then I had a problem. I knew that that would happen. Once again, I didn't turn inward. I didn't turn fully to God. I went into sex addiction. But I knew I couldn't have like real dates. So I spent a few years just dating escorts and traveling all around the world on sex tours and all of that. And almost killed myself. 34 years sober because of lust and greed. And I say almost killed myself. I mean that literally, not figuratively. Ended up hospitalized several times. Blood pressure 220 over 130. I'm trying to perform like a 20-year-old, and I'm 51 at the time. And I got really sick, chronic hypertension. I couldn't exercise. I went from 225 in a year to 330. And obesity, I also got type 2 diabetes. At one time, I was taking 30 pills a day. And I almost died behind lust and greed. And I learned that I had to give every area of my life to God, including my money, my women, my relationships, my health, everything. Best decision that I've ever made. But all my human resources had to fail me. I had to have a new experience in step one. I had to be completely destroyed in step one. Only then can I come to believe. And then I can make a decision. And then from that decision, I can launch this course of vigorous action. See, now I'm right with God. And with God's power and God's love and mercy and grace, I was able to get right with myself in steps 4 through 7. Find out who I truly was. One of our old timers says, let AA help you become who you're always meant to be. And that's happened to me in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. In step 8 and 9, I got right with all you, my brothers and sisters. And I continue to do that. A year ago on a walk, I had a realization of these amends that I needed to make from when I was a child, of all the homes that I had robbed, of all these homeowners. And I couldn't remember them. Most of them are dead. I talked to my sponsor. I make a $200 payment monthly to Homeboy Industries. He let me come up with a charity that was suitable to me, that I supported, that I believed in. We came up with a money figure. And then he said to me, he says, you know what? You can afford it. Let's leave this $200 payment until you die. I was like, that seems a little high. But I said, you know what, Spons? I'm going to follow your direction. So that's one of the amends that I'm making. See, everything comes due spiritually. It's a spiritual law. Everything comes due. I live in a state of grace and mercy and love and joy in my life today. I'm free. I'm free from the bondage of self. I'm free from suffering. I'm free from that state of mind that can only be described as savage. I'm free from the bone-crushing juggernaut of self. I'm here to love and to share love with those who want it, and even those who want it but can't accept it. Sam Shoemaker, who was a member of the Oxford group, has a poem called Standing by the Door. That's his job, to stand by the door, to help those poor souls that are grasping about blindly trying to find the door. That's what I'm supposed to be doing, carrying the message to those who still suffer, be they alcoholic or just human beings who are in need of some kindness, some compassion, some love. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm in love with God today. I've forgiven myself. That situation I told you about that happened to me, that trauma as a child, I came to a place where I was able to forgive my abuser. I was able to talk with my mother about it, See, my family had found out about it. This is back in the 70s. The Catholic Church was all powerful. And after having a conference at the school, they sent me back to my abuser. It affected my mom and my relationship for most of my life. And we were able to talk about it and cry and tell her I love her. It wasn't her fault. They did the best they could. And she got free. She got free from that shame, that guilt that she'd carried around for decades. See, this all happens in Alcoholics Anonymous. This all happens in God's love, because that's truly what this program is about, is to bring me to a power by which I could live that will solve my problem. That's what I've found. AA's got me. God's got me. I truly am in the loving arms of AA. I relate to the prodigal son. I'm so grateful to be back at my Father's table. I'm so grateful to be here tonight with all of you. And I think I'm probably out of time. So I'm going to end it there and say thank you very much.